All right, hello and welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about conditions. So conditional statements in programming are a way for us to control the flow of a program based on true or false values. And the way we do that in C# is with if statements. And it's the same in a lot of languages, but it's nice and easy in C#. So I'm going to write out a little if statement here, and to do that, all we have to do is type if, and IntelliSense knows that I'm about to write an if statement. So I could double press tab and it will create a little quick and easy one for me like that, but I'll just write it out myself so you can see what we're doing. So all we have to do is type if, and then parentheses, and then a bracket like that. In between the parentheses, that's where we put our condition, goes in here. And then in between these two brackets, this code executes if condition is true. So this code inside of the brackets will only run if this condition is evaluated to true. If it's false, then the program just skips over it. So let's create a nice simple condition that we could work with. Get rid of this and this. Here, I'll say integer x gets 10, and integer y gets 5. Now I want to say if x is greater than y, then console write line. You've seen this before in the other videos. Console write line, x is greater than y. All right, and we'll run that. So it's saying x is greater than y. Now what happened there is the program came through, x got 10, y got 5. It read this and goes, okay, is x greater than y? So is 10 greater than 5? Yes, it is. So I print this. So I run this line of code in here. All right. So what if I had put equals to here? So if x is equal to y, then run this line of code. So in this scenario, x is not equal to y, so nothing should happen when I run this program. And outside of the if, I'm just going to put a read line. And if you remember from the previous video, it just holds the console open until a button has been pressed. That's just so we can see what's happening. But in this scenario, nothing should happen because this is false. So we won't see this message appear. So we'll run this. Cool. And you can see there, nothing has gotten printed. It's just waiting at the read line for me to close it. So we'll press enter, and that closes the program. So that's how nice and easy an if statement is. It's just simply saying, if this is true, then do the code here. If not, then move on. With if statements, we also had the option of an optional else statement if we want. And that allows us to do something else if this value is not true. So just expand this out a little bit. So the else has to go directly after the brackets of the if statement, and doesn't need any parentheses. Like you just put the brackets like that. So now what's going to happen is if this is true, we'll run this line of code. Else, whatever's in here will run. Okay, so we'll change this back to if x is greater than y, and in here we'll say console write line x is not greater than y, like that. And I might just change these around so you can see the else statement work. 1, we'll make this 1000. So if x is greater than y, then this will run, else this will run. Nice and easy. Cool. You can see that x is not greater than y, and that's exactly what we expected. So with if statements, we can also do what are called nested if statements. And you can do as many of those as you like. They just have to go inside of the block of the first if statement. So let's change this around a little bit, and we'll say, take these out, int exam score is 85, and int passing score is 50. Okay. In here, I'm going to say if exam score is greater than the passing score, then we'll print out congrats, you passed. But we might have another condition that we want to evaluate here. So down here on the next line, but inside the block of this if, I can go if double tap tab to do the shortcut and just delete that out. And we'll say if exam score is equal to 100, then console line. Wow, you aced it. Cool. And then I might want to change my else statement to be you failed. Study harder. Okay. Let's work through this as if we were the program. So program runs, it comes here and creates us an integer variable called exam score and assigns 85. That's the score that we got. We then create an integer variable called passing score, and that gets the value of 50. That's the score we need to pass the exam. It'll then get here and read this if statement and say if exam score is greater than passing score, which in this case is true. So it's true, so we enter into the ifs block and we write congrats, you passed. It will then read this next line, if exam score is equal to 100. In this case that's false, so it will skip this block here. If that was true, it would do that and that. Okay? And then in this instance, the else block won't actually run at all. So in an if-else construct, if the if statement is true, it goes through and does this and doesn't execute the else. So the else only gets executed if the condition fails. All right. So let's run this and we'll see what happens. We should just get congrats, you passed. Cool. Congrats, you passed. That's just as we expected. This was true, so we got that. That is not true, so we didn't get that. Because that was true, we didn't get the else statement. Now let's change this around a little bit and we'll go, we got 100 in our exam. Now what do you think will happen here? We should get two statements. So congrats, you passed, and wow, you aced it. That's because the program came through, goes, that's true, so I'm going to enter here and I'll write this line. This is also true, so I'm going to write this line. It still doesn't do the else. Because these were true, it doesn't bother with the else, it just skips over that. But let's make it, oops, stop the program if I want to make changes. Change that to 30, so I wasn't studying very hard and I got a bad score. Run that again, you failed, study harder. That's because the program read this, it goes, that's actually false, so I'm going to jump down here. So in this case, it doesn't even get to this line in here. It never enters this if block. It just goes, nah, false, come down here, else statement. Okay, so you can actually nest an unlimited number of if and else statements inside each other like this. You can go if, else, if, it's, and you can do that as many times as you want to do. It's not really considered best practice to do that though. If you find yourself going down more than 2 or 3 layers in your if statement, then you should consider simplifying your logic or separating it out, creating its own function, just because it becomes very hard to read and know what's going on, especially in large programs. If you've gone down through like 10 sort of if statements, and the code actually ends up like over here as well, and it looks really messy. So just in the interest of best practice, try and keep these to 2, 3, maximum sort of 4 nests. And if you're ever working in a team, the other people you work with will be very happy with you. Okay, so last thing to show you with these conditions is the else if statement. And we would use the else if statement if we had 3 or more actions that we needed to decide upon. So let's get rid of the stuff in here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. This. And we'll use the example of, let's say we're having a party, and we're not sure how many people are going to come round, but we still need to order some food for them. So we want to, based on the number of guests that are coming, we want to order the right amount of food. So we could say number of guests, and we'll just start that with a 0. In here, I might say if number of guests is equal to 0, we might say get some friends. All right, and then here I can say else if, and again, just hitting double tab will, if you're using Visual Studio, will create those if statements for you. It's super handy when you're going through. I'm just going to write this out and then we'll talk about it in a second. Else if number of guests is equal to 3, or say 5, console, right line, order 3 pizzas. Here I'm going to say else if number of guests is equal to 7, and this 5 pizzas. And lastly, else, say if there's loads of people coming, console, right line, just order 10 pizzas. And that should cover us for the whole party. So let's have a look at what we've written here. We'll go back up to the top, and we'll change this variable around, and we'll run it a couple of times, and you'll see what happens. So if number of guests is equal to 0, then we're saying get some friends, can't have a party without more than one guest. But what happens here is I'm saying else if number of guests is equal to 5, I want to say order 3 pizzas. Else if number of guests is equal to 7, I want to order 5 pizzas, and we could go on and on and on. But this last else statement will run if none of these are true, and we'll just get 10 pizzas. So the important thing to note about an else if construct like this is that if one of these values is true, then anything below it will not run. So if we get to here and this evaluates as true, none of this code down here will run. And same as if that was true, like it will be in the first instance, you'll see nothing here will run. If we hit all of these and they're all false, then the else statement will run. Does that make sense? And I'll just run it now, and you'll see all we'll get is this first statement because number of guests is 0. Oh, get some friends. So nothing here, nothing here, nothing here ran because this evaluated true. So the program went, yep, true, do that, gets there, and then it goes down to the bottom. Okay? And you'll see if I do it with like the middle one, number of guests is 5. On that, order 3 pizzas. So the way the program moved through that was, came here and it saw a number of guests equal to 0. And it was like, that's false, so I'm going to skip that. Number of guests is equal to 5. It's like, that's true, so I'm going to write that line out. But then because that was true, it skips these and just comes down here. Okay? And you'll see if we do like number of guests 100, then the else statement runs, just order 10 pizzas. All right? So that's conditional statements in C# programming. They're nice and easy to get your head around. Simply just if the value is true, then the code in the brackets runs. And if you remember that simple piece of information, then even when you see sort of big, scary looking if-else statements in large programs, it's just remember that it's always that simple how it works. All right, so thanks very much for watching. Next week we'll be moving on to loops, and we'll see some of these conditions will come into play as well. Thanks again, and like, share, and subscribe.